The prophecy came to Elder Margaret in the hours before dawn, when the veil between worlds grew thin and the moon goddess whispered secrets to those who still remembered how to listen. She stood at her window in the highest tower of Silver Ridge Pack House, watching storm clouds gather over the Rocky Mountains like dark omens. The dream clung to her, still vivid and terrible. A girl with no wolf, a shadow beast bowing where it should have conquered, and a corruption so deep it had poisoned the very roots of their world. When the wingless speaker rises and the shadow beast bows, Margaret whispered to the glass, her breath fogging the ancient pain. The corrupt council shall fall, or darkness devours all. She had seen this gathering coming for decades, had known in her bones that this centennial meeting would be different from all the others. 52 alphas converging on Silver Ridge territory. The most powerful wolves in North America gathering under one roof for the first time in 100 years. And somewhere among them, hidden like a jewel in mud, walked the last beast speaker. Margaret pressed her weathered hand against the window. She was 78 years old. She had seen wars and treaties, births and burials, the rise of great alphas and the fall of corrupt ones. But this would be her legacy. The moment she had been preparing for since the day Elena Ashwood died screaming in what everyone called a rogue attack. 20 years of watching, 20 years of waiting, 20 years of protecting a secret that could save them all or destroy everything. The girl didn't even know what she was, but she would, soon. Margaret turned from the window as the first light of dawn broke over the mountains, painting the snow-capped peaks in shades of gold and blood. The gathering began today, and with it, the prophecy would unfold whether they were ready or not. In the gardens below, already awake despite the early hour, Luna Ashwood knelt in the dirt with a wounded sparrow cradled in her hands. The bird had broken its wing in last night's storm. Luna had found it at first light, huddled beneath the rose bushes that lined the eastern wall of the pack house, its tiny heart beating so fast she could feel it through its feathers like a drum of pure terror. She didn't speak to it, not out loud. That would have drawn attention, and Luna Ashwood had learned long ago that attention meant pain. Instead, she let her mind go quiet and soft, the way she'd been doing since she was old enough to understand that she was different. The way she'd been doing in secret for 20 years, talking to creatures that the rest of the pack couldn't hear, finding comfort in wings and fur and scales when her own kind offered nothing but cruelty. The sparrow's voice came to her not in words but in images and feelings. Pain, fear, the memory of wind-too-strong branches that wouldn't hold. And underneath it all, a desperate need to survive, to fly again, to return to the nest where 3 hungry mouths waited. "I know," Luna whispered so quietly the sound barely disturbed the morning air. "I know it hurts, but you're gonna be okay. I promise." She could feel the break in the wing, a clean snap that would heal if given time and care. She had splinted bird wings before working with the materials scavenged from the pack house, scraps of cloth, thin pieces of wood thread stolen from the sewing room. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency, gentle but sure, while she projected feelings of safety and warmth through the connection that existed between her and all living things. The sparrow settled, its frantic heartbeat slowing. It understood. In whatever language existed beyond words, it understood that she meant no harm. Luna permitted herself a small smile, the first genuine expression she'd worn in days. This was the only time she felt whole. When she knelt in the dirt talking to creatures that didn't care that she was wolfless, that didn't mock her for being broken, that simply accepted her for what she was. "You are talking to yourself again, freak." The voice cut through the peaceful moment like a blade, sharp and deliberate and designed to wound. Luna didn't look up. She knew that voice the way soldiers knew the sound of incoming fire. Victoria Coldwell, daughter of Alpha Marcus, the golden child of Silver Ridge Pack, stood somewhere behind her with that cruel smile that had haunted Luna's nightmares since childhood. "I'm helping," Luna said quietly, her voice steady even though her hands trembled slightly. She could feel the eyes on her back, could sense the contempt radiating from the group of young wolves who had followed Victoria out here like predators following an apex hunter. They always followed her, always watched, always waited for another opportunity to remind Luna of what she was not. The laugh that followed was cruel and familiar, a sound like breaking glass wrapped in honey. Helping, Victoria's shadow fell across Luna and the bird blocking out the morning sun. "You're kneeling in the dirt talking to a bird. That's not helping. That's insanity." The sparrow chirped softly, and Luna heard its small voice in her mind as clearly as if it had spoken human words. "Bad wolf comes, the one who smells of rotting flowers. Make her go away." Luna almost smiled at that. Even the birds knew what Victoria was. "The bird doesn't think so," Luna replied and immediately regretted it. The other wolves laughed, the sound harsh and mocking. There were 5 of them today, Luna counted without looking. 5 perfect wolves with perfect transformations and perfect connections to their inner beasts. Everything Luna was not. Of course the bird agrees with you, Victoria said, crouching down so she could look Luna in the eyes. Her face was twisted with disgust, her perfect blonde hair catching the morning sun like spun gold. Because you're absolutely insane, 23 years old and still no wolf. My grandmother transformed at 8, my mother at 7. Even the Omega pups in this pack managed their first shift by 15, at the latest. But you, nothing, just a pathetic human pretending to be one of us. Luna felt the familiar burn of shame in her chest, but she kept her expression neutral. She had learned years ago that showing emotion only made it worse. The sparrow rustled in her hands and she felt its fear spike. The bird could sense her distress, could feel the predatory energy rolling off the wolves surrounding them. She is right, a fox called from somewhere in the nearby trees, its voice sharp with concern. You should leave this place. These wolves do not deserve you. But leaving was not an option. She had nowhere else to go. No other pack would take a wolf without a transformation. No human community would accept someone who heard animals speak. She was trapped here, had been trapped here since birth, subject to the mercy of a pack that had none. Maybe she's not talking to the bird at all. One of the other wolves suggested a boy named Marcus Jr., who had tormented Luna since childhood. Maybe she's talking to the wolf she pretends to have, the imaginary one that only exists in her delusional mind. More laughter, always more laughter. Luna carefully set the sparrow down on a soft patch of moss, whispering to it, without words, sending feelings of safety and healing through the connection that seemed to exist between her and all living creatures. The bird understood. It nestled into the moss, its fears subsiding as warmth spread through the bond. Rest now, little sister, Luna thought. Heal. I'll check on you later. She stood slowly brushing dirt from her worn jeans. She was small compared to the others, barely 5'4", with wild dark hair that never seemed to stay in the braids she tried to tame it into. Her clothes were old hand-me-downs from the pack donations because she had no family to provide for her. Her parents had died in a rogue attack when she was 3, and the pack had raised her out of obligation, not love. She was a burden, a charity case, a wolfless embarrassment that reflected poorly on the entire Silver Ridge pack. Are you done playing with your little friend? Victoria asked, standing as well. She was nearly 6 inches taller than Luna, all long legs and aristocratic grace. Everything an alpha's daughter should be. I need to prepare for the gathering. Luna tried to move past the group, keeping her head down, but Marcus Jr. stepped into her path, blocking her. Oh, that's right, he said, his grin widening. The gathering of alphas starts today. Every important wolf from every important pack in the continent will be here, and you get to serve them drinks like the glorified human servant you are. Luna's jaw tightened. The gathering happened once every 100 years, a sacred meeting of all alpha bloodlines to discuss territory alliances and the future of their kind. It was the most important event in the werewolf world, and Silver Ridge Pack had been chosen to host it this century. For weeks, the pack had been preparing, transforming the grounds into a showcase of wealth and power. And Luna, as the lowest member of the pack hierarchy, had been assigned to the serving staff. At least I'm useful, Luna said, and tried again to move past Marcus. This time he grabbed her arm, his grip just tight enough to hurt without leaving a mark. He had practiced that grip over the years, knew exactly how much pressure to apply. Useful. Victoria laughed again, that tinkling sound that reminded Luna of breaking glass. You're about as useful as a wolf without teeth. Actually, that would be more useful than you, because at least a wolf without teeth would still have a wolf. Something inside Luna cracked then, just a little. A lifetime of abuse had taught her to endure, to keep her head down, to survive. But there was only so much a person could take before the walls they built around their heart started to crumble. Let me go, Luna said, her voice low and harder than she'd ever allowed it to be before. Or what? Marcus challenged, his eyes flashing with the gold that indicated his wolf was close to the surface. You'll sick your imaginary wolf on me. You'll ask the birds to peck me to death. Please, Luna, we both know you're powerless. She felt it then, a stirring deep inside her chest. Not her wolf, because she had long ago accepted that her wolf either didn't exist or was so deeply buried it might as well be dead. No, this was something else. Something that had always been there, but that she had never fully understood. A connection to the world around her that went deeper than words, deeper than thought. Every living thing within 100 yards suddenly turned its attention toward her. Birds stopped singing. Insects paused in their endless work. The fox in the trees went perfectly still. Even the grass beneath her feet seemed to lean toward her, as if waiting for a command. I said, Luna repeated, and this time her voice carried something that made Marcus's eyes widen. Let me go. For just a moment, his grip loosened. Just enough. Luna pulled free and walked away quickly, her heart pounding, not understanding what had just happened, but knowing she needed to get away before things escalated further. Behind her, she heard Victoria's voice sharp with irritation. That freak is getting bolder. Someone needs to remind her of her place before the alphas arrive. Can you imagine the embarrassment if any of them see her acting like she matters? Luna kept walking, kept her head down, kept breathing. Just a few more hours, just get through the day, get through the gathering, survive like you always have. But something had changed. She could feel it in the air and the earth beneath her feet, in the way the animals around her had responded to her distress. Something was coming, something that would change everything. She just didn't know if that change would save her or destroy her. The pack house loomed ahead, massive and intimidating, filled with wolves preparing for the arrival of the most powerful alphas in the world. And somewhere among them would be him, the Alpha King, Kieran Nightshade. Even his name sent shivers through the pack. They spoke of him in whispers and tones mixed with reverence and fear. The most powerful alpha in 5 generations, a warrior who had united the Northern Territories through a combination of strategic brilliance and overwhelming force. A leader whose wolf was so dominant that he could force entire packs into submission without a single word. He had never found his mate. And rumors said his wolf grew more unstable with each passing year, more violent, more unpredictable. Some whispered about a feral curse about an alpha losing himself to his beast nature, one piece at a time. Luna had seen his picture in the pack records, had studied his face the way one might study a coming storm. Dark hair, darker eyes, a face carved from stone and shadow, beautiful and terrible in equal measure. He looked like the kind of man who could destroy you with a glance, who carried death in one hand and dominion in the other. And he was coming here. Today. Luna pushed through the servants' entrance at the back of the pack house, immediately enveloped by the chaos of preparation. Wolves rushed everywhere carrying linens and flowers, polish, and paint. Mrs. Beatrice Hartwell, the head housekeeper, spotted Luna immediately and waved her over with barely contained anxiety. She was a woman in her 60s, gray-haired and efficient, one of the few wolves who had ever shown Luna a shred of kindness, though even that kindness was wrapped in pity. There you are, Mrs. Hartwell said, her voice thick with the stress of the day. We're behind schedule. The alphas begin arriving in 3 hours, and the main hall is not ready. I need you to help with the table settings. Can you do that without causing problems? Luna swallowed the hurt that came with the casual assumption that she was a problem waiting to happen. Yes, Mrs. Hartwell, I can do that. Good. And Luna, the older woman's voice softened just slightly. Stay out of sight as much as possible during the actual gathering. Alpha Marcus made it very clear that he doesn't want you visible when the other alphas are present. It reflects poorly on the pack to have a wolfless member serving at such an important event. Of course it did. Everything about Luna reflected poorly on the pack. She was a walking reminder of failure, of weakness, of whatever genetic flaw had left her unable to access the wolf that should have been her birthright. I understand, Luna said quietly. She worked quickly and efficiently, setting tables with a precision born from years of practice. She arranged silver and crystal folded napkins into complicated shapes, placed name cards at each seat with careful attention to pack hierarchy. The main hall was massive, with soaring ceilings and walls lined with portraits of past alphas. At the head of the room sat the high table where the most powerful alphas would dine. She saw the name cards as she placed them. Alpha Marcus Coldwell of Silver Ridge, Alpha Isabella Silverfang of Shadow Ridge, Alpha Constantine of Ironpaw. And there in the center position of highest honor, the card that made her hand shake slightly as she set it down. AlphaKing Kieran Nightshade of the United Northern Territories. Luna stared at the card for a moment too long, trying to imagine what it would be like to meet him. Would he look at her with the same contempt as the others? Would he even notice her at all? She was meant to be invisible after all. A ghost moving through the halls, serving and cleaning and existing only to make the lives of real wolves easier. Luna, the sharp voice made her jump. She turned to find Victoria striding into the hall, now dressed in a gown that probably cost more than Luna would see in a year. The Alpha's daughter looked like royalty, every inch of her, designed to attract the attention of powerful males. Did you touch my place setting? Victoria demanded, moving to examine the table where her cards sat several seats down from the high table but still in a position of prominence. I set all the tables, Luna confirmed, keeping her voice neutral. Mrs. Hartwell assigned me to do so. Well, you did it wrong. Victoria picked up a fork and examined it as if searching for flaws. This silver isn't polished enough. I can see a spot right here. Do it again. Luna looked at the fork. It was perfectly polished, gleaming under the lights of the hall. There was no spot. But contradicting Victoria was pointless. Yes, Victoria, Luna said quietly, reaching for the fork. But Victoria didn't hand it over. Instead, she held it up higher, just out of Luna's reach, forcing her to stand on her toes and stretch for it. The other young wolves who had followed Victoria into the hall laughed at the spectacle. Luna felt heat creep up her neck, felt the familiar burn of humiliation, but she kept her expression blank. Don't react. Don't give them the satisfaction. Just survive. Finally, Victoria dropped the fork. It clattered to the floor, bouncing under the table. Oops, Victoria said, her smile sharp as knives. Better get that. Wouldn't want the AlphaKing to see dirty silverware on the floor. Luna knelt and crawled under the table, her fingers closing around the fork. She could hear them above her, their laughter floating down like poison rain. This was her life. This had always been her life. And unless something changed, it always would be. But as she crouched there in the shadows beneath the table, her hand wrapped around the fork, Luna heard something else. Voices. Close. Hushed. Urgent. Victoria's voice, but different now. No longer mocking. Serious. Almost frightened. The stones are in place, Victoria whispered to someone Luna couldn't see. All 13 of them exactly where you said. When the alphas fall sick, the chaos will be enough. Father will step in as emergency leader, and the Northern Territories will be ours. Another voice responded, male-hooded and distorted. The AlphaKing must not survive the first night. Everything depends on that. Your father's ascension, it depends on that. I understand, Victoria said. The poison is strong enough to fell even Kirin Nightshade. By tomorrow morning, there will be a new order. Luna's blood turned to ice. Poison, assassination, 13 stones. She stayed perfectly still under that table, her heart hammering so hard she was certain they could hear it. But the voices moved away. Victoria's heels clicking across the marble floor, and then there was silence. Luna emerged from under the table slowly, the fork clutched in her hand like a weapon. She had just overheard a plot to murder the AlphaKing, and she had absolutely no idea what to do about it. 3 hours later, Luna stood in the shadows of the main hall with the other servants dressed in the simple black uniform that marked her as invisible as beneath notice, as part of the furniture. But her mind was racing. 13 stones. Poison. The AlphaKing must not survive. She had tried to tell Mrs. Hartwell, but the older woman had been too harried, too stressed, waving Luna away with an impatient hand. Not now, child. I don't have time for your fantasies. She had considered going to Alpha Marcus directly, but the thought made her stomach turn. If Victoria's father was involved in the plot, and how could he not be with Victoria, speaking of father's ascension, then telling him would only paint a target on Luna's back. So she stood there, trapped in her own knowledge, watching as the massive doors at the far end of the hall opened and the Alphas began to enter. They came in order of power and prestige, each one announced by a herald. They were magnificent, these rulers of the werewolf world, tall and powerful, moving with the predatory grace that came from a lifetime of dominance. Their eyes glowed with the gold of their wolves, marking them as the elite, the strongest, the chosen leaders of their kind. Alpha Constantine entered with his mate, a woman nearly as intimidating as he was. Alpha Isabella came alone, her reputation as a warrior queen preceding her like a banner. Others followed, each one adding to the display of power and prestige. And then the herald's voice rang out one final time, and the entire hall fell silent. Presenting His Majesty AlphaKing Kirin Nightshade, ruler of the United Northern Territories, uniter of the broken packs, keeper of the ancient laws. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Luna felt it like a physical force, a pressure that made it hard to breathe. Every wolf in the hall instinctively bowed their heads, submitting to a power greater than their own. Even the alphas, proud and powerful as they were, lowered their eyes in respect. Luna bowed her head as well, but she couldn't stop herself from looking up, from catching a glimpse of the man who commanded such absolute obedience. He was taller than she had expected. The pictures had not captured the sheer presence of him, the way he seemed to fill the space around him with something that was not quite visible, but absolutely undeniable. He wore black, simple and unadorned, which somehow made him more intimidating than if he had been covered in jewels and finery. His face was exactly as she had seen in the pictures, hard and beautiful, with eyes so dark they seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. But it was what walked beside him that made Luna's breath catch in her throat. His wolf. She had heard the stories, but nothing could have prepared her for the reality. Storm was massive, easily the size of a small horse, with fur so black it seemed to shimmer with blue undertones. Its eyes were the color of molten amber, and they radiated an intelligence that was almost frightening. Wolves didn't usually maintain their transformation except during pack runs or battles. To see an alpha's wolf walking beside its human form was unprecedented, a display of power that bordered on the supernatural. Kieran Nightshade moved through the hall like a king surveying his domain, his expression revealing nothing. Storm moved with him, step for step, perfectly synchronized. They were terrifying. They were magnificent. They were everything Luna would never be. Alpha Marcus rushed forward, his own head bowed, his voice full of deference. Your Majesty, welcome to Silver Ridge Pack. We are honored beyond measure to host the gathering. Please allow me to show you to your quarters so you can rest before the evening meal. But Kieran did not respond. Storm had stopped walking. The massive creature stood absolutely still in the center of the hall, its head raised, its nostrils flaring. Every wolf in the room tensed, sensing something wrong. Kieran frowned, his hand moving to rest on Storm's head. Storm, he said quietly, his voice deep and carrying easily through the silent hall. What is it? Storm did not respond to its human. Instead, it began to move again, but not toward the quarters that had been prepared. It moved toward the side of the hall, toward the servants, toward Luna. She felt her heart stop, felt the world narrow to the sight of that massive wolf walking directly toward her with purpose and intent. Every instinct she had, human and otherwise, screamed at her to run. But she was frozen, pinned in place by eyes that saw too much, knew too much. The other servants scattered, pressing themselves against the walls, leaving Luna standing alone as Storm approached. She heard Kieran's voice sharp with command. Storm, heal, now! But Storm did not obey. For the first time in the memory of anyone present, the AlphaKing's wolf ignored a direct command. It kept coming, closing the distance between them with steady, measured steps. Gasps echoed through the hall. Wolves whispered in shock and confusion. This was impossible. Storm was legendary for its obedience, for the iron control Kieran maintained over it even in the most chaotic situations. Luna wanted to run, wanted to disappear, but her feet would not move. Storm was so close now, she could see the individual hairs in its fur, could smell the scent of pine and earth, and something wild that made her head spin. Storm stopped directly in front of her, so close she could feel the heat radiating from its massive body. She stared into those amber eyes and saw something that made no sense. Recognition. Storm knew her. Somehow, impossibly, it knew her. And then, while the entire hall watched in stunned silence, Storm did something it had never done for anyone except Kieran himself. It lowered its massive head, it folded its legs. It lay down at Luna's feet and placed its enormous head in her lap, a gesture of submission and adoration that defied everything anyone knew about this creature. Luna felt tears spring to her eyes without permission. She felt Storm's presence in her mind, not words exactly, but feelings, emotions. Mine. Safe. Home. Found you. The hall erupted into chaos. Voices shouted over one another. Wolves surged forward and then back, torn between shock and the instinct to protect their king. But through it all, Luna heard only one voice, low and dangerous, carrying a fury that made her blood freeze. What? Said Kieran Nightshade, and every word was a barely leashed threat. Have you done to my wolf? Luna looked up from Storm in her lap, looked past the wall of fur and heat, and met the eyes of the AlphaKing. They were blazing with gold, his wolf rising to the surface in response to whatever was happening. He looked like he wanted to rip her apart with his bare hands. He looked like she had stolen something precious. He looked like she had just become the most dangerous person in his world. And Luna, who had spent her entire life invisible, suddenly found herself at the center of attention, from the one man in the world she should have remained hidden from. Storm rumbled contentedly in her lap, and Luna realized with creeping horror that her life had just changed in ways she could not begin to understand. The question was whether she would survive those changes long enough to discover what they meant. The silence that followed was somehow worse than the chaos. Every eye in the grand hall fixed on Luna, where she knelt with Storm sprawled across her lap like an overgrown puppy, seeking affection. The weight of the creature was immense. Its head alone probably weighed more than her entire body. And yet it radiated such contentment that Luna could feel it thrumming through the bond that had somehow formed between them. She had not created this bond, had not asked for it, but it was there, undeniable and growing stronger with each passing second. Kieran Nightshade moved toward her with deadly grace, his face a mask of controlled fury that did nothing to hide the rage burning in his eyes. Every wolf in his path scattered, pressing themselves against walls, submitting with everything they had. No one wanted to be between the AlphaKing and whatever threat he perceived, and Luna apparently was that threat. I asked you a question, Kieran said, his voice dropping to a register that made the windows rattle. What have you done to my wolf? Luna opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Her hands had somehow found their way to Storm's fur fingers tangling in the impossibly soft black coat without her conscious decision to touch it. Storm pressed closer to her, a low rumble of pleasure vibrating through its massive chest. Luna tried again, forcing words past her terror. I did nothing. I swear I didn't do anything. I don't know why your wolf lies. The word cracked like a whip. Kieran was close enough now that she could see the gold bleeding into his eyes, could see the tension in every line of his body as he fought to maintain control. Storm has never done this, never ignored my command, never approached anyone without my explicit permission. And yet he comes to you like a tame dog seeking treats. So I ask again, and I will not ask a third time, what did you do, Alpha? Marcus pushed through the crowd, his face pale with fear and anger in equal measure. Your Majesty, I deeply apologize for this disruption, Marcus said, his voice oily with false concern. This girl, she is an aberration in our pack. Wolfless, defective. She must have used some kind of magic or trickery to manipulate your companion. I assure you she will be severely punished for this insult to your person. You will be silent, Kieran commanded, and it was not a request. The Alpha of Silver Ridge Pack, a man who ruled over hundreds of wolves, snapped his mouth shut like a chastened child. Kieran's attention returned to Luna, and she felt like she was being dissected by that stare, examined and analyzed and judged. Stand up, he ordered. Luna tried to obey, but Storm had other ideas. The massive wolf made a sound that could only be described as a whine of protest, pressing even harder against her, as if to prevent her from moving. Storm! Kieran's voice sharpened. Let her stand. For a moment, Storm didn't move. Then slowly and with obvious reluctance, it lifted its head from Luna's lap and shifted backward just enough to allow her room to stand. But Storm did not leave her side, did not return to its human. Instead, it positioned itself between Luna and Kieran, as if protecting her from him. The hall erupted into fresh whispers. This was beyond unprecedented. This was impossible. A wolf protecting someone from its own human was a violation of everything they understood about the bond between human and wolf. Luna stood on shaking legs, her hands falling to her sides. She was covered in black fur, her worn servant's uniform making her look even more out of place among the finely dressed pack members. She felt Kieran's gaze travel over her, cataloging every detail, every flaw, every sign of her low status. What is your name? He asked, his tone still dangerous but with an edge of something else now. Curiosity, perhaps? Or calculation? Luna, she whispered, Luna Ashwood. And you are wolfless. It was not a question. He could sense it, or perhaps he simply believed what Alpha Marcus had said. Either way, there was no point in denying it. Yes, Your Majesty. Interesting. Kieran tilted his head slightly, studying her the way a predator might study unusual prey. Tell me, Luna Ashwood, do you have any explanation for why my wolf, who has never submitted to anyone except me, who has been trained since birth to obey only my commands, who represents half my soul, has decided you are more important than following my direct orders? The question was a trap. Any answer she gave would be wrong. If she said yes, she admitted to manipulating his wolf somehow. If she said no, she looked like she was lying or hiding something. Either way, she was condemned. But then a voice came to her, speaking in her mind, with the clarity that only she could hear. The fox from the garden, somehow present, despite the walls and distance. Tell him the truth, little sister. The dangerous ones sometimes respect honesty more than cleverness. Luna took a breath and met the Alpha King's eyes, knowing it was foolish, knowing she should look down in submission, but unable to do anything else in this moment. I speak to animals, she said simply. I always have. Birds, foxes, deer, horses. They speak to me, and I speak to them. Not with words exactly, but with feelings and images and understanding. I thought I was broken because I have no wolf. But maybe I'm just different. Maybe whatever I have instead of a wolf allows me to connect with creatures in a way other wolves cannot. She paused, searching for the right words. Your wolf, she continued carefully, your wolf feels like pack to me, like family. I didn't create that feeling. I swear I didn't. But I recognize it. The silence that followed her confession was absolute. Wolves stared at her like she had grown a second head. Some looked afraid, others looked disgusted. Victoria's voice cut through the quiet, sharp with mockery. She's insane, Your Majesty. She has always been insane. She talks to birds and claims they talk back. She spends more time with animals than with the pack. We have tolerated her only because we are merciful, but this display proves she is dangerous. She should be removed from the pack immediately. No one asked for your opinion, child, Kieran said without even looking at Victoria. His eyes never left Luna's face. A beast speaker, he said quietly, almost to himself. I thought the bloodline died out 300 years ago. Luna blinked. A what? Beast speaker. Kieran took a step closer and Storm shifted to keep its body between them, drawing a low growl of frustration from the Alpha King. An ancient bloodline that could communicate with all creatures, not just their own wolves. They were revered as shamans and guides able to speak with nature itself. They were also incredibly rare, appearing perhaps once every few generations. The last confirmed beast speaker died during the Great War of Territories, and most assumed the gift died with her. He paused, his expression unreadable. Apparently we were wrong. I don't understand, Luna said, her mind reeling. If this is a real gift, if it's a bloodline ability, why don't I have a wolf? Why can't I transform like everyone else? Because you don't need to. The answer came from an unexpected source. An elderly woman pushed through the crowd, her hair silver with age but her posture straight and strong. Luna recognized her as Elder Margaret, one of the oldest living wolves and a keeper of pack histories. If she is truly a beast speaker, Margaret continued, her voice carrying easily through the hall, she doesn't need a wolf of her own. Her gift allows her to connect with all wolves, all creatures. A personal wolf would limit that connection, narrow her focus to one animal instead of all of nature. Elder Margaret's eyes fixed on Luna with something like wonder. Child, do you know who your parents were? Luna shook her head. They died when I was 3. A rogue attack. I don't remember them. And no one thought to check her lineage. Elder Margaret's voice sharpened with accusation as she turned to Alpha Marcus. No one thought it strange that a child would survive a rogue attack that killed 2 adult wolves. No one questioned why she didn't manifest a wolf. Alpha Marcus's face flushed with anger and embarrassment. She was orphaned and traumatized. We assumed the trauma blocked her transformation. It happens sometimes. It does not happen, Elder Margaret countered. And if you had bothered to check the old records instead of simply labeling her defective, you would have discovered that her mother was Elena Ashwood, last descendant of the Ashwood line, which traces directly back to Uriah, the wise, the most powerful beast speaker in recorded history. The revelation hit Luna like a physical blow. Her mother had been special, had carried this bloodline. Why had no one ever told her? Why had she spent her entire life believing she was broken? And then another thought struck her, colder and more terrible. You knew, Luna said, looking at Alpha Marcus. His face had gone from flushed to pale, a sickly gray that told her everything she needed to know. You knew about my mother's bloodline. You knew what I was. Marcus said nothing, but his silence was answer enough. This changes nothing, Victoria protested, her voice rising with frustration. Even if she has some ancient bloodline, that doesn't explain why the Alpha King's wolf is acting like she owns it. That doesn't give her the right to manipulate His Majesty's companion. I didn't manipulate anything, Luna said, finding her voice again. 2 decades of suppression had taught her silence, but beneath it, anger sparked. All these years of abuse, of mockery, of being treated as less than nothing. And they had known. Someone must have known about her mother's bloodline. Someone had chosen to keep it hidden, chosen to let her suffer. Your wolf came to me, Luna continued, her voice stronger now. I didn't call it. I didn't summon it. I was standing here trying to be invisible like I always do, and it chose to approach me. Kieran had been silent during the exchange between Elder Margaret and Alpha Marcus, but now he raised a hand and everyone immediately quieted. Storm, he said, his voice firm, but lacking the edge of anger it had held before. Come here. Storm turned its massive head to look at its human, and Luna felt the conflict radiating from the creature. Loyalty to Kieran warred with whatever instinct had driven it to her. The bond between human and wolf was supposed to be absolute, unbreakable. For Storm to hesitate even for a moment was evidence of how powerful this new connection was. Please, Luna whispered, speaking directly to Storm, through the strange link that existed between them. Go to him, he's your other half. You belong to him. Storm made a low sound of distress, but slowly, reluctantly, it moved away from Luna and returned to Kieran's side. The Alpha King immediately placed his hand on Storm's head, and Luna saw some of the tension leave his shoulders. Whatever connection existed between them, it was still there, still strong. She had not broken it. This situation, Kieran said carefully, each word measured and precise, is unprecedented. I need time to understand what has happened here and what it means. The gathering will proceed as planned. This matter will be discussed privately once I have had time to consult with my advisors and study the historical records. He paused, his eyes finding Luna's once more. You will come to my quarters in 1 hour. We will speak about your gift and about what happened here. Do you understand? Luna nodded, not trusting her voice. Good. Alpha Marcus, show me to my rooms. Kieran's tone made it clear this was not a request. The rest of you return to your preparations. The gathering begins at sunset, and I expect everything to be perfect despite this disruption. The crowd slowly dispersed, wolves moving with obvious reluctance, clearly disappointed to miss whatever confrontation they had been anticipating. Victoria shot Luna a look of pure venom as she passed, and Luna knew without doubt that this was far from over. Whatever protection Elder Margaret's revelation might have offered was temporary at best. Kieran moved toward the exit with Storm at his side, but Storm kept turning back to look at Luna, its amber eyes full of longing and confusion. Luna felt the pull too, felt something inside her reaching toward the wolf, wanting to follow, wanting to understand this connection that had formed without her permission or understanding. As the Alpha King disappeared through the doorway, Elder Margaret approached Luna, her weathered face kind but serious. "Child, you need to understand something," the old woman said quietly. "What happened here today will change your life in ways you cannot imagine. The Alpha King is the most powerful wolf alive, and his wolf choosing to acknowledge you, to submit to you even for a moment, means something significant." Margaret's hand found Luna's, squeezing gently. "There will be those who see you as a threat now. There will be those who want to use you. And there will be those who want to eliminate you before you become too powerful." "I'm not powerful," Luna protested. "I can't even transform." "You are a beast speaker," Elder Margaret corrected gently. "That makes you one of the rarest and most valuable wolves in existence. Your power is different from ours, but it is no less real." The fact that Storm recognized that power, responded to it, suggests a bond that goes beyond simple recognition. The old woman pressed something into Luna's hand, a small leather pouch that smelled of herbs and earth. "Wear this around your neck. It will help shield your thoughts and emotions from wolves who might try to sense them. And when you meet with the Alpha King, be honest. He values truth above all else, even when that truth is uncomfortable." Elder Margaret left then, and Luna was alone in the grand hall, staring at the pouch in her hand and trying to process everything that had just happened. 1 hour. She had 1 hour before she had to face the Alpha King again. 1 hour to prepare for a conversation that could determine the course of her entire future. Mrs. Hartwell found Luna in the hallway 20 minutes later, looking equal parts anxious and determined. "There you are," the older woman said, her usual briskness softened by something that might have been concern. "Come, you cannot meet the Alpha King looking like that. You're covered in wolf fur and garden dirt. Let me help you clean up." She led Luna through the servant passages to a small room with a basin of warm water and a clean set of clothes, nothing fancy but better than what Luna usually wore. As Mrs. Hartwell helped her wash and change, she spoke in low, urgent tones. "I don't know what happened out there, and I don't pretend to understand it, but I do know this: the Alpha King is not a man who tolerates deception or manipulation. Whatever you are, or whatever you can do, he needs to see that you mean no harm." "I don't mean any harm," Luna said quietly. "I never have." Mrs. Hartwell paused in her work, her hands gentle as she combed through Luna's hair. "Then show him that, child. Be yourself. And perhaps, for the first time in your life, someone will finally see you as you truly are." She finished with Luna's hair, pulling it back into a neat braid. "There, you look presentable. And Luna, don't be afraid to look him in the eye. You have nothing to be ashamed of. Not anymore." Mrs. Hartwell escorted her through the pack house to the wing that had been prepared for the Alpha King. Guards stood at attention outside the massive doors, their eyes tracking Luna with suspicion and hostility. One of them, a large male with scars crossing his face, looked at Mrs. Hartwell. "This is the wolfless girl." "This is Luna Ashwood," Mrs. Hartwell corrected firmly. "The Alpha King requested her presence." The guard's lip curled with disdain. "The king is inside with his beta. You'll wait here until he's ready for you." They were made to stand in the hallway for what felt like an eternity, but was probably only 10 minutes. Luna could hear voices from inside the room, too muffled to make out words, but carrying the tone of serious discussion. Finally, the door opened and a man emerged. He was nearly as tall as Kieran, but leaner, with brown hair and sharp green eyes that assessed Luna in a single glance. "I am Beta Thorn Ironclaw," he said, his voice neutral. "The Alpha King will see you now. I will be present during this meeting as witness and counsel." "Do you understand?" "Yes, Beta Ironclaw," Luna replied, pleased that her voice remained steady. He stood aside to let her enter, and Luna stepped into the room beyond. It was a suite fit for royalty, with expensive furniture and tapestries depicting great battles from werewolf history. But Luna barely noticed the decor because her attention was immediately captured by the man standing near the window. Kieran had removed his formal jacket and stood in only a black shirt that somehow made him look more dangerous rather than less. Storm lay on a rug near the fireplace, but the moment Luna entered, the wolf's head came up and its tail began to wag, a gesture so incongruous in such a fearsome creature that it might have been funny under different circumstances. "Sit," Kieran commanded, gesturing to a chair positioned in the center of the room. It was positioned so that she would be facing both him and Beta Thorn, so that light from the window would illuminate her while they remained partially shadowed. An interrogation set up. Luna sat, keeping her spine straight and her hands folded in her lap. Years of observation had taught her to read power dynamics. She would not apologize anymore, would not act ashamed of something she had not done. "Elder Margaret has provided me with the historical records regarding beast speakers." Kieran began pacing slowly in front of the window. "The accounts are fragmentary and often contradictory, but certain facts are consistent. Beast speakers could communicate with all creatures, not just wolves. They served as mediators between packs and nature, ensuring balance and understanding." He stopped pacing and turned to face her directly. "They were also highly sought after as mates by powerful alphas, because their ability to communicate with wolves made them invaluable in managing large packs and territories." Kieran's eyes locked onto hers. "What is also consistent in these accounts is that beast speakers had an almost supernatural ability to calm and influence wolves, not through dominance or force, but through understanding and connection. A powerful beast speaker could theoretically influence even an alpha's wolf if the connection was strong enough." "Are you suggesting I'm influencing your wolf?" Luna asked, meeting his eyes despite every instinct telling her to look away. "I am stating facts," Kieran replied. "What I am asking is whether you are aware of any ability you might have to influence or control wolves beyond simple communication." "No," Luna said firmly. "I can speak with animals. I can understand their feelings and thoughts, but I have never controlled them. I have never made them do anything against their will. I wouldn't even know how to begin attempting such a thing." Beta Thorn stepped forward, his expression skeptical. "Your Majesty, with respect, we only have her word on this. She could be lying to protect herself. We should test her, verify her claims before we decide how to proceed." "And if I refuse this test," Luna asked, turning to look at the Beta, "then we assume you have something to hide," Thorn said bluntly. Kieran raised a hand, stopping his Beta from saying more. "The test is premature. Before we determine what she can do, we need to understand what happened with Storm. That is the immediate concern." He moved closer to Luna, close enough that she could smell him, a scent of pine and winter air, and something uniquely his that made her head swim. "I am going to ask you a series of questions, and I expect complete honesty. Do you understand?" "Yes, Your Majesty." "Good. First question, when Storm approached you, what did you feel?" Luna thought back to that moment, trying to put sensations into words. "Recognition," she said slowly. "Like seeing someone I had known in another life. Warmth, safety, a sense of rightness, like pieces of a puzzle fitting together." "Did you feel any desire to command or control my wolf?" "No, I felt like Storm was family, like pack. I wanted to comfort it, to understand why it was approaching me, but I had no desire to control it. When I commanded Storm to return to me, you told my wolf to obey. Why?" The question surprised her. "Because Storm belongs to you. The bond between you and your wolf is sacred. I would never try to come between that. I know what it's like to not have a wolf, to feel incomplete. I would never wish that pain on anyone, especially not by stealing their wolf away." Something flickered in Kieran's dark eyes, some emotion Luna could not identify. "And yet," he said quietly. Storm hesitated. "Storm has never hesitated to obey me before, not once in 15 years. What does that tell you?" "That whatever connection formed between us is powerful," Luna admitted, "but not more powerful than your bond. Storm returned to you. That proves where the wolf's true loyalty lies." "More, it proves that you are skilled enough to make it seem like Storm returned willingly when in fact you released control," Beta Thorn interjected. Luna felt her temper flare, the anger that had been building all day finally finding a target. "I have no reason to manipulate anyone," she said, her voice sharp. "I am the lowest ranked wolf in this pack. I own nothing. I have no power. I have no connections. What possible benefit would I gain from manipulating the AlphaKing's wolf?" She stood abruptly, no longer able to sit still. "All I have done is exist, and apparently even that is too much for people to accept without assuming the worst of me." The words came out sharper than she intended, but she could not bring herself to regret them. She was tired, tired of being accused, tired of defending her existence, tired of apologizing for being different. Kieran's eyebrows rose slightly, and she realized with horror that she had just snapped at the Alpha King, that she had raised her voice to the most powerful wolf alive. But instead of the anger she expected, Kieran smiled. It was a small smile, barely there but genuine. "You have spirit," he said. "I appreciate that. Too many wolves cower and grovel. It grows tiresome." He returned to his pacing and Luna released a breath she had not known she was holding. "Here is what I have decided," Kieran announced. "The situation is too complex to resolve immediately. Beast speakers are too rare and too valuable to make hasty judgments about. Therefore, you will remain under my direct observation for the duration of the gathering." He paused, letting the words sink in. "You will attend the official functions as part of my personal staff rather than the general serving staff. This will allow me to watch how you interact with Storm and to determine whether there is truly a natural bond or whether you are exerting influence." "Your Majesty," Beta Thorn protested, "having her so close could be dangerous if she is manipulating Storm." "Then we will discover that quickly, will we not?" Kieran replied. "Besides, if she truly is a beast, Speaker having her close might prove useful. These gatherings always involve delicate negotiations. Having someone who can read the emotions and intentions of others through their wolves could be advantageous." He turned back to Luna. "You will be given quarters near mine. You will dress appropriately for formal functions. You will comport yourself with dignity and respect. In return, I will ensure you are treated according to your bloodline rather than your pack status. Do you accept these terms?" Luna's mind reeled. He was offering her protection, status, proximity to power, all things she had never dared to dream of. "But at what cost? What happens after the gathering?" she asked. "When you return to your territories and I return to my place here?" "That depends entirely on what we discover during the gathering," Kieran said. "If you prove to be what I suspect you are, if you truly are a legitimate beast speaker with no intention of manipulating or controlling others, then you will be offered a choice." His eyes held hers. "You can remain here with Silver Ridge Pack, though I will require Alpha Marcus to treat you according to your bloodline status. Or you can come with me to the Northern Territories where your gifts would be valued and protected." The offer hung in the air between them, heavy with possibility. To leave Silver Ridge Pack, to escape the years of mockery and abuse, to go somewhere she might actually belong. It was everything she had dreamed of and terrifying in equal measure. "I accept your terms," Luna said quietly. "Good." Kieran moved to a rope pole near the door and tugged it. Moments later, a female wolf entered, tall and elegant with honey-colored hair. "This is Lady Helena," Kieran introduced. "She is my head of household staff." "Helena, this is Luna Ashwood, the Beast Speaker. She is to be given quarters in the guest wing, provided with appropriate clothing for formal occasions, and treated as an honored guest. Anyone who disrespects her answers to me directly. Is that clear?" Lady Helena's eyes widened slightly, but she controlled her surprise quickly. "Perfectly clear, Your Majesty. Miss Ashwood, if you will follow me, I will show you to your quarters and see to your needs." Luna stood, her legs unsteady beneath her. As she moved toward the door, Storm suddenly rose from the rug and padded over to her, pressing its massive head against her side in a gesture of affection. She could not stop herself from running her fingers through Storm's fur one more time, marveling at the connection she felt. "Storm," Kieran's voice was firm, and reluctantly Storm returned to its human side. But the amber eyes never left Luna, and she felt the pull of that connection even as she walked out of the room. The quarters Lady Helena showed her to were beyond anything Luna had ever experienced. A large bedroom with an actual bed, a private bathroom with hot water, a closet being filled with gowns and formal wear. "The first function is in 3 hours," Lady Helena explained. "The welcome feast. You will sit at the high table 2 seats to the left of His Majesty. I will return in 2 hours to help you dress and prepare." After Lady Helena left, Luna sank onto the bed and buried her face in her hands. 2 seats from the Alpha King, at the high table, where everyone could see her, where Victoria and her cronies would watch with hatred, where powerful alphas would wonder who she was and what she had done to earn such a position. A soft tapping at the window made her look up. A raven sat on the sill, its black eyes bright with intelligence. "May I enter, Speaker?" it asked in her mind. "The forest creatures wish to know if you are well. They felt your distress earlier." "I am well," Luna assured it, moving to open the window. "Or I will be. Everything has changed very suddenly." "Change is the nature of life," the raven observed, hopping into the room. "The Wolf King protects you now. That is good. But the pack wolves are angry. That is dangerous. The bird's head tilted, fixing her with one obsidian eye. "You must be careful, young speaker. Your power is awakening, but it is not yet strong enough to protect you from those who would do you harm. What do you mean my power is awakening? Luna asked. But the raven had already taken flight, disappearing into the darkening sky outside her window, with a call that sounded almost like laughter. Luna closed the window and leaned against it, watching the sun sink toward the horizon. In a few hours, she would walk into that hall wearing a fine gown, sit at the high table, be visible in a way she had never been before. The question was whether visibility would finally give her the belonging she craved, or whether it would simply make her a bigger target for those who wanted her gone. The gathering was just beginning, and Luna Ashwood, the invisible Omega who had spent 23 years believing she was broken, was about to discover that sometimes the greatest power lies not in the roar of dominance, but in the quiet voice that speaks to the forgotten, the overlooked, the wild things that remember what it means to be free. When Lady Helena returned 2 hours later, she brought with her a team of attendants who transformed Luna into someone she barely recognized. The gown they dressed her in was midnight blue, simple in design but clearly expensive, cut to flatter her small frame without being ostentatious. They left her hair down, unusual for formal events, but the dark waves cascading over her shoulders somehow made her look more exotic than unkempt. Subtle cosmetics enhanced her features without hiding them. And when they finally allowed her to look in the mirror, Luna saw a stranger staring back. She looked like she belonged at a high table, like she had the right to sit among alphas, like she was more than the invisible servant they had all dismissed. "You look lovely," Lady Helena said with genuine warmth. "The Alpha King has excellent instincts. You will make quite an impression tonight." "That's what I'm afraid of," Luna admitted. Lady Helena smiled knowingly. "Fear is natural, but remember you have done nothing wrong. You are there by royal command, under royal protection. Let anyone who has a problem with that take it up with His Majesty." The feast was being held in the largest hall Luna had ever seen, clearly built specifically for events like the gathering. Long tables stretched the length of the room, each one covered in white linens and set with silver and crystal. The high table sat on a raised dais at the far end, positioned so that those seated there could observe the entire gathering. Wolves were already filing in as Lady Helena led Luna through a side entrance, and the whispers started immediately. Luna felt hundreds of eyes turned toward her, felt the weight of judgment and curiosity and hostility. She kept her head high, kept her steps measured and confident, even though her heart was trying to beat its way out of her chest. "Presenting Miss Luna Ashwood, honored guest of His Majesty Alpha King Kirin Nightshade," a herald announced as they approached the high table, and the whispers grew to a dull roar. Luna saw Victoria at one of the lower tables, her face twisted with such rage that for a moment Luna thought the other woman might actually attack her right there in front of everyone. Alpha Marcus looked like he had swallowed something bitter. His jaw clenched so tightly Luna wondered if his teeth might crack. But she also saw Elder Margaret, the old woman, smiling with approval, and a few others whose expressions showed curiosity rather than hostility. Lady Helena guided her to her assigned seat, 2 chairs to the left of the throne-like seat that would hold the Alpha King. Beta Thorn was already seated to the right of the throne, and he nodded to Luna with grudging respect. "You clean up well," he said quietly. "Let us hope you can also behave appropriately during the feast." "I have been serving at formal functions for years," Luna replied. "I know which fork to use." A hint of amusement crossed the Beta's face. "Good, because at least 3 alphas at this gathering would love an excuse to declare you unworthy of your position. Don't give them that excuse." Before Luna could respond, the herald's voice rang out again. "Presenting His Majesty Alpha King Kirin Nightshade, ruler of the United Northern Territories." Every wolf in the hall stood and bowed their heads as Kirin entered. He had changed into formal attire, black and silver, that somehow made him look even more imposing than before. Storm walked at his side as always, the massive wolf's presence, a reminder of the power Kirin commanded. They approached the high table together, and Luna's breath caught as Storm's amber eyes found hers immediately. The wolf made a small sound of pleasure, its tail moving in what could only be described as a wag. Kirin noticed, of course. Nothing escaped his attention. He glanced at Luna, something unreadable in his expression, before taking his seat. The moment he sat, everyone else was permitted to sit as well, and the hall filled with the sound of chairs scraping and fabric rustling. "Honored Alphas," Kirin began, his voice carrying easily through the hall, "we gathered tonight to celebrate a tradition that has sustained our kind for thousands of years. The gathering of Alphas represents our commitment to unity, to diplomacy, to the strength we find in cooperation, rather than constant conflict." He paused, his gaze sweeping across the assembled wolves. "Over the next 7 days, we will discuss territories, resolve disputes, and forge alliances that will guide our packs for the next century. But tonight, we feast. We celebrate. We remember that before we are rivals or allies, we are wolves. We are pack. We are family. It was a good speech, striking the right balance between formality and warmth. Wolves throughout the hall raised their glasses in toast, and servants began bringing out the first course of what would be an elaborate meal. As the feast progressed, Luna found herself hyper-aware of every movement, every word. She ate carefully, spoke only when spoken to, and tried to ignore the stares that continued to come her way. Alphas from various packs kept glancing at her, clearly wondering who she was and why she merited a seat at the high table. "You are doing well," Kieran said quietly during a lull in conversation. "Relax. You look like you expect someone to attack you at any moment." "That's because I do expect someone to attack me," Luna replied honestly. "Perhaps not physically, but with words, with accusations, with attempts to undermine my position here." "Won't let them try," Kieran said, and there was something dark and dangerous in his tone. "Anyone who challenges you challenges me. I do not take such challenges lightly." As if summoned by those words, Alpha Marcus rose from his seat at a lower table and approached the high table, bowing deeply. "Your Majesty, might I have a word?" "Speak," Kieran commanded. Marcus's eyes flickered to Luna with barely concealed resentment before returning to Kieran. "Your Majesty, I feel I must apologize for the earlier disruption involving Miss Ashwood. Had I known of her bloodline, I would have ensured she was treated appropriately from the beginning. However, I hope you understand that her behavior over the years has been unusual. She has spent more time with animals than with the pack, has shirked her responsibilities on numerous occasions, and has shown a concerning lack of respect for pack hierarchy." "Was that so?" Kieran's voice was dangerously soft. "Tell me, Alpha Marcus, when you learned that an orphan child in your pack might carry the bloodline of beast speakers, one of the rarest and most valuable gifts among our kind. What steps did you take to verify that bloodline? What efforts did you make to train and develop her potential gifts?" Alpha Marcus's face paled. We did not know for certain." "You did not bother to find out," Kieran corrected, his voice cutting like a blade. "You saw a child without a wolf and decided she was defective. You allowed her to be treated as a servant, as less than nothing for over 20 years. You permitted your pack members to mock and abuse someone who could have been a tremendous asset to your territory." The hall had gone deathly quiet. Every wolf present could hear the rebuke, could see Alpha Marcus being dressed down by the king himself. "Do not stand before me now and criticize her behavior," Kieran continued, "when you are the one who failed in your duty as Alpha to every member of your pack. It was a humiliation Marcus would not forget or forgive." "I understand, Your Majesty," Marcus said stiffly. "It was an oversight I deeply regret. With your permission, I would like to make amends by formally recognizing Miss Ashwood's bloodline and elevating her status within Silver Ridge Pack." "That will not be necessary," Kieran said coldly. "Miss Ashwood's status is not yours to determine. She is under my direct protection now, and decisions about her future will be made by me in consultation with her. Not by you, not by anyone else. Am I clear?" "Perfectly clear, Your Majesty." Marcus bowed again and retreated to his table, his humiliation complete. Luna sat frozen, trying to process what had just happened. The Alpha King had publicly defended her, had openly declared her under his protection, had made it clear that anyone who wanted to harm her would have to go through him first. But she also remembered what she had overheard under the table. The poison plot, the 13 stones, and she had to tell him. "Soon. You didn't have to do that," Luna whispered. "Yes, I did," Kieran replied. "Weak alphas like Marcus are part of why our kind struggles. They care more about appearances and traditions than about recognizing value and potential. If we are to survive the challenges ahead, we need to be better than that." Before Luna could respond, another alpha approached the high table. This one was female, tall and elegant, with silver streaking through her black hair. "Your Majesty," she said, her voice respectful but curious. "I am Alpha Isabella Silverfang of Shadow Ridge Pack. Forgive my boldness, but I must admit to intense curiosity about your young companion. Beast speakers are legend in my territory. We have stories of one who lived among us 3 centuries ago, who helped broker peace between our pack and the bear clans of the northern mountains." Isabella's sharp eyes found Luna's. "If Miss Ashwood truly carries that gift, I would be honored to hear of her experiences." It was said politely, but Luna could sense the test in it. Alpha Isabella was giving her an opportunity to prove herself, to demonstrate that she deserved her place at this table. Luna took a breath and met the Alpha's eyes, remembering Elder Margaret's advice about honesty. "I have only recently learned that my abilities have a name, Alpha Isabella. For most of my life, I believed I was simply broken, unable to transform like other wolves. But yes, I can communicate with animals. Birds tell me of dangers they have seen. Foxes share news of the forest. Even insects will sometimes warn me of threats I cannot see. She paused, choosing her words carefully. The connection is not something I control consciously. It simply exists like breathing. Fascinating, Isabella said, genuine interest in her voice. And you can communicate with all creatures, not just warm-blooded animals. I believe so, though I have not tested the full extent of the gift. I once helped a spider colony relocate from the pack house kitchens by explaining to them that the cooks would kill them if they stayed. They understood and moved to the gardens instead. A few wolves nearby chuckled at that, and Luna saw some of the tension in the room ease slightly. Isabella smiled. A practical application. I like that. Tell me, have you considered what you might do with such a gift if given the proper resources and training? It was a loaded question. Luna glanced at Kieran, who nodded slightly, giving her permission to answer freely. I have not had time to consider it, Luna admitted. But if I could choose, I would like to help bridge the gap between wolves and other creatures. We share territories with so many species, yet we rarely communicate with them. We encroach on their lands without understanding. We hunt without knowing if we are disrupting important migrations or breeding grounds. She felt herself warming to the topic, speaking with more confidence. A beast speaker could serve as a mediator, ensuring that all creatures can coexist more peacefully. A noble goal, Isabella approved. If you ever find yourself in need of a territory that values such work, Shadow Ridge would welcome you. It was an offer Luna realized. A powerful alpha was offering her a place in her pack publicly where everyone could hear. It was also a subtle challenge to Kieran, a way of testing how seriously he meant his protection. I appreciate the offer, Alpha Isabella, Luna said carefully. But for now, I am committed to understanding my gifts better before making decisions about where I might use them. Wisely said, Isabella replied, inclining her head before returning to her seat. The rest of the feast passed in a blur of introductions and careful conversations. Several other alphas approached to speak with Luna, some out of genuine curiosity, others clearly testing to see if she deserved her position. Through it all, Kieran remained a steady presence at her side, occasionally interjecting when conversations grew too aggressive, but mostly allowing her to navigate the social waters herself. Storm remained close as well, the massive wolf lying at Kieran's feet, but with its head turned toward Luna, as if keeping watch over her. She could feel the connection between them, that inexplicable bond that had formed the moment their eyes met. It was not romantic or possessive, not like the mate bond she had read about in old stories. This was something purer, simpler, a recognition of kinship, of understanding, as if Storm could sense something in her that even she did not fully understand yet. Finally, as the feast wound down and wolves began to disperse to various reception rooms for more informal socializing, Kieran stood and offered Luna his hand. "Walk with me," he said. It was not a request. Luna took his hand, feeling calluses and strength, and allowed him to lead her out of the hall through a side exit. Storm followed, of course, the wolf's presence a constant reminder of the strangeness of this entire situation. They walked through the gardens behind the pack house, the moon rising full and bright overhead. The night air was cool and clean, carrying the scent of flowers and earth. "You handled yourself well tonight," Kieran said after a few minutes of silence. "Better than I expected for someone who has never been trained in pack politics." "I have spent years observing," Luna replied. "When you are invisible, you see things others miss. You learn how power flows, how alliances form and break. I may not have participated, but I have always been paying attention." "That makes you dangerous," Kieran observed. "Knowledge is often more powerful than strength." "Is that why you are keeping me close?" Luna asked. "Because you think I am dangerous. I am keeping you close because my wolf has decided you are important, and I have learned to trust Storm's instincts even when I do not understand them." He stopped walking and turned to face her. "But I will not pretend I am not also intrigued by what you represent. A beast speaker could change the balance of power in this world. Your ability to communicate with all creatures, to potentially influence them, makes you incredibly valuable. There will be alphas who want to use you, others who will want to eliminate you before you become a threat." His eyes held hers, dark and intense. "I need to determine which category I fall into." The honesty was startling. Most powerful wolves would have hidden their motivations behind pretty words and false assurances. But Kieran laid his cards on the table, making it clear that he had not decided if she was an asset or a threat. Luna took a breath, deciding that if he could be honest, so could she. "There's something you need to know," she said, "something I overheard today before you arrived." Kieran's entire demeanor shifted, his casual stance becoming alert, focused. "Tell me." "I was under the table in the main hall retrieving a fork Victoria had dropped, and I heard her talking to someone, a man I think, though his voice was distorted. They were talking about poison. about 13 stones placed throughout the pack house, about making sure you don't survive the first night. The words tumbled out in a rush, and Luna watched Kieran's face harden with each revelation. She said when the Alphas fall sick, the chaos will allow her father, Alpha Marcus, to step in as emergency leader. She said the Northern Territories would be theirs. Kieran was silent for a long moment, his jaw tight with controlled fury. You are certain of what you heard? Yes, every word. And you're telling me this now, after sitting through an entire feast where I could have been poisoned. There was no accusation in his tone, only curiosity. I tried to tell Mrs. Hartwell earlier, but she thought I was making up fantasies. And I couldn't tell Alpha Marcus because Victoria mentioned Father's ascension. If he's involved in the plot, telling him would only make things worse. But you needed to know. I just didn't know how to tell you without sounding insane. Kieran studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. You made the right choice, and for what it's worth, I believe you. A beast speaker would have no reason to fabricate such a story, especially not after I've offered you protection. He turned to Storm. We need to find those stones tonight, before whatever poison they contain can be activated. Storm's ears pricked forward, the wolf instantly alert. Kieran looked back at Luna. Can you help? Can your gift detect where these stones might be hidden? Luna thought about it. I can try. If there are rats or insects near the stones, if they've been affected by whatever poison is on them, I might be able to sense their distress. Then let's begin. They moved through the pack house like ghosts, Luna reaching out with her gift, searching for signs of animal distress. Storm padded silently beside them, the wolf's senses adding to their search. In a ventilation shaft near the kitchens, Luna felt a cluster of insects agitated and sickly. Here, she whispered. Kieran reached into the shaft and pulled out a small, carved stone, dark and pulsing with malevolent energy. He wrapped it carefully in cloth and handed it to Beta Thorn, who had joined them silently. Secure this. Find the others. They found 12 more over the next 2 hours, behind loose stones and walls, tucked into corners of supply closets, hidden in the rafters of the council chamber. 13 stones, just as Victoria had said. Each one carved with symbols Luna didn't recognize, each one radiating a wrongness that made her skin crawl. Blood magic, Elder Margaret said when they brought the stones to her for examination. The old woman had been roused from sleep, but her eyes were sharp and alert, forbidden for 3 centuries. Whoever created these has walked dark paths. She looked at Luna with new respect. You saved us, child, all of us. If these had been activated during tomorrow's council session, every alpha in that room would have fallen ill. Some might have died. And in the chaos, Marcus would have seized power exactly as you overheard. Kieran's hand found Luna's shoulder warm and solid. You have my thanks, Luna Ashwood, and my trust. Whatever else happens during this gathering, know that you have proven yourself invaluable. Luna felt tears prick her eyes but blinked them away. What happens now? She asked. Now, Kieran said grimly, we set a trap. Marcus and Victoria don't know we found the stones. Tomorrow we let them think their plan is proceeding. And when they move to seize power, we'll be ready. He looked down at her, his dark eyes softening just slightly. But tonight you need rest. You've done more than enough. Storm pressed against Luna's side and she felt the wolf's warmth, its contentment at having her near. Will you be safe? She asked Kieran. His smile was fierce and dangerous. I have Storm, I have Thorn, and now I have you watching over me through every creature in this territory. I've never been safer. As Lady Helena escorted Luna back to her quarters, Luna felt the weight of the day finally settling on her shoulders. She had gone from invisible servant to recognized bloodline, from mockery to protection, from worthless to invaluable. And tomorrow she would help bring down a conspiracy that threatened the entire werewolf world. The gathering was just beginning, and Luna Ashwood, the Beast Speaker, was about to discover that her story was far bigger than she had ever imagined. Dawn broke over the Rocky Mountains, painting the snow-capped peaks in shades of crimson and gold. Luna stood at her window watching the sunrise over a world that had fundamentally changed in the span of a single day. Behind her, a soft knock at the door announced Lady Helena's arrival with breakfast and a message. His Majesty requests your presence at the morning council session. Helena said, her eyes bright with something that looked like pride. You are to sit with his personal guard. He wants you listening to everything. Luna understood, not just to the wolves in the room, but to the creatures in the walls, the insects in the corners, the birds outside the windows. Kieran was asking her to be his eyes and ears in ways no other wolf could match. The council chamber was already filling when Luna arrived, taking her position in a chair slightly behind and to the left of Kieran's seat. Beta Thorn nodded to her, his earlier skepticism replaced by grudging respect. Storm lay at Kieran's feet, but the wolf's eyes tracked Luna's every movement, and she felt that now familiar warmth of connection pulsing between them. Alpha Marcus called the session to order, his voice steady and authoritative. But Luna, watching him carefully, could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his eyes kept flickering to the corners of the room where the poison stones had been hidden. He was waiting for wolves to start falling ill. The council discussed territorial boundaries, water rights, hunting grounds, standard negotiations that would normally take hours to resolve. But Luna could sense the undercurrent of anxiety from Marcus and his allies, 6 alphas total. She counted, all seated in a cluster on the eastern side of the chamber. The Council of 6, just as she'd heard Victoria mention. And then it happened. A mouse emerged from a crack in the wall, moving with unnatural purpose toward the center of the room. Its eyes were glazed, its movements jerky and wrong. Luna's gift flared to life, and she felt the compulsion driving the creature forward. Not poison stones this time, something else. Something alive and malevolent. More mice followed, then rats. Dozens of them, all moving with that same terrible purpose, all carrying disease in their bodies, all driven by a will that was not their own. "Your Majesty," Luna said urgently, standing. "Evacuate, now." Kieran didn't question. His command cut through the rising panic like a blade. "Everyone out. Orderly. Move." Alphas surged toward the exits, their centuries of training keeping them from stampeding. But Luna could feel the rats getting closer, could sense the sickness radiating from their small bodies. She closed her eyes and reached out with her gift, not to communicate, but to push, to override the compulsion driving the creatures forward with a command of her own. "Stop. Turn back. You are free." Yeah. It was like pushing through thick mud, fighting against a force that wanted to control, to dominate, to use these innocent creatures as weapons. But Luna had spent 23 years developing this gift in secret, learning its nuances, understanding its depths. She was stronger than whoever was driving the rats forward. The creatures stopped mid-stride, their glazed eyes clearing. Confusion replaced compulsion. And then as one, they scattered, fleeing back to their nests, back to safety. Luna opened her eyes to find the entire council staring at her. "Blood magic again," Elder Margaret said grimly, emerging from where she'd been observing. "A compulsion spell. Someone is actively controlling creatures against their nature." "Find them," Kieran ordered. "Now." But Luna already knew. She could feel the source of the compulsion, could trace it back through the psychic link to its origin. "The old tower," she said. "Eastern wing. Someone's there channeling power through carved stones." Kieran Thorne and a dozen of Kieran's personal guard moved as one. Storm bounded ahead, following Luna's directions unerringly. They found the practitioner in a room at the top of the tower, a man Luna didn't recognize, surrounded by candles and carved stones identical to the ones they'd found the night before. His hands moved in complex patterns, weaving magic that should have been lost centuries ago. "For Marcus." The man screamed, lunging not at Kieran but at Luna. He had a silver blade. He was fast. And he was absolutely committed to killing the one person who could stop his master's plans. Storm moved like black lightning, intercepting the man mid-leap. But the blade found its mark not in Luna, but in Kieran, who had thrown himself between her and the attacker. Silver sank into Kieran's shoulder, and the AlphaKing went down with a roar of pain. Luna felt her gift explode outward in a wave of pure protective fury. Every creature within a half-mile radius responded. Birds crashed through windows. Insects swarmed. Even the horses in the stables below began screaming and kicking at their stalls. "No," Luna said, and her voice carried weight that made the stone walls tremble. "You will not harm my pack." The practitioner stumbled backward, overwhelmed by the sheer force of nature responding to Luna's call. Storm's jaws closed around his throat, ending the threat permanently. Luna dropped to her knees beside Kieran, her hands moving to the silver blade still embedded in his shoulder. "Don't pull it out," Thorn barked. "Silver poisoning." "I know," Luna said. Her hands were steady, her mind clear despite the terror clawing at her chest. 23 years of learning, healing, from watching pack doctors, from trial and error, with injured animals crystallized into purpose. She'd saved countless creatures. Now she would save him. "Storm," she whispered to the wolf. "I need you to hold him still." Storm moved immediately, pressing its massive body against Kieran's side, providing warmth and stability. Luna pulled the blade free in one smooth motion, then pressed her hands to the wound, channeling everything she had learned about healing through the bond she shared with all living things. She could feel Kieran's wolf beneath his skin, feel Storm's presence intertwining with her gift, and together they pushed back against the silver poisoning, forcing it out, knitting flesh and muscle and sinew. It took 5 minutes that felt like hours. When Luna finally lifted her hands, the wound had closed to an angry red scar. Kieran's breathing had steadied the gold fading from his eyes as the immediate danger passed. "You saved my life," he said, quietly looking up at her with something like wonder. "You saved mine first," Luna replied. "I just returned the favor." Thorn was already organizing the guards securing the tower, removing the blood magic implements. But Luna and Kieran remained where they were, storm pressed between them like a bridge. "The bond between us," Kieran said slowly. "It's not just storm, is it? You feel it too." Luna nodded. "I don't know what it is, but yes, I feel it." "Mate bond," Elder Margaret said from the doorway, her weathered face creased with a smile. "Rare for it to form so quickly, rarer still for it to involve a beast speaker, but unmistakable nonetheless." She looked at Luna with approval. "Your mother would be so proud, child. You've become everything she hoped you'd be." The council reconvened 3 hours later, this time in a different chamber swept clean of any magical interference. Every Alpha was present, but now there were also 3 stern-faced wolves wearing the silver insignia of the Alliance, the governing body that superseded even Alpha authority. High Chancellor Morrison, a man in his 70s with silver hair and eyes that missed nothing, took the central seat. "We received Elder Margaret's summons 2 days ago," Morrison said without preamble. "She suspected corruption would reveal itself during this gathering. It appears she was correct." He looked at Kieran. "Your Majesty, present your case." What followed was 3 hours of systematic evidence presentation. Financial records showing the Council of Six's illegal operations, $500 million in trafficking, smuggling, and extortion over 15 years. Testimony from rescued Omegas about systematic abuse. The blood magic stones and their connection to the assassination attempts. And at the center of it all, Alpha Marcus and his allies, their faces growing paler with each revelation. But the moment that changed everything came when a woman stepped forward from the crowd of observers. She was 26 with dark hair and Luna's eyes. "My name is Rowan Ashwood," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. "I am Luna's sister. And I have evidence that Alpha Marcus didn't just suppress my sister's gifts. He murdered our parents to prevent them from revealing what she was." The chamber erupted in shocked whispers. Rowan held up a leather journal, its pages yellowed with age. "Our mother's diary. She discovered Marcus was planning to kidnap infant Luna to use her beast speaker abilities as a weapon. When our parents tried to flee with us, Marcus sent assassins. They killed our parents. I escaped with this journal. I've been hiding for 10 years, gathering evidence, waiting for the right moment." She looked at Luna with tears streaming down her face. "I'm sorry I left you. I'm sorry I let you suffer. But I couldn't let their deaths be meaningless. I had to make sure Marcus paid." Luna stood her legs unsteady and crossed the chamber to embrace the sister she'd thought was dead. They held each other while the council watched in respectful silence. "You survived," Luna whispered. "That's all that matters, and now we finish this, together." Chancellor Morrison's voice was granite hard as he addressed Marcus. "You stand accused of murder, conspiracy, blood magic, attempted assassination of the AlphaKing, trafficking, and systematic abuse of pack members. How do you answer these charges?" Marcus's face was ashen, but he drew himself up with the last shreds of his dignity. "I did what was necessary to protect my pack, to ensure our future. You did what was necessary to enrich yourself," Kieran interrupted, his voice cutting. "You sacrificed honor, law, and innocent lives for power and wealth. You are everything an Alpha should never be." The trial lasted another 2 hours as the Council of Six tried desperately to defend themselves. But the evidence was overwhelming. Testimony from pack members who had suffered under their rule, financial records, the blood magic practitioner's confession before he died. And through it all, Luna sat at Kieran's side, Storm's head in her lap, feeling the weight of justice finally being served. When Chancellor Morrison rendered his verdict, his voice rang with finality. "Alpha Marcus Coldwell and the Council of Six, you are hereby found guilty on all charges. You are stripped of your titles, your territories, and your wolves. You will be exiled to human lands with tracking implants, forbidden from ever returning to pack territories. Your assets will be seized and redistributed to your victims." He paused, letting the sentence sink in. "And know this, we will be watching. If you ever attempt to harm another wolf, if you ever try to return, the sentence will be death. You have 1 hour to prepare for exile." Marcus's face crumpled. To lose one's wolf, to be cut off from the bond that defined them, was a fate worse than death for most wolves. But it was justice. As the guards led Marcus and his co-conspirators away, Victoria appeared from the crowd. She approached Luna slowly, her face tear-stained and broken. "I'm sorry," Victoria said, her voice barely a whisper. "I'm sorry for everything. The bullying, the cruelty, the plot. My father, he raised me to believe power was everything that the end justified any means. I didn't know how to be anything else. She looked at Luna with genuine remorse. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that what you said once about not becoming what they tried to make you, I understand that now. It's too late for me, but maybe others can learn from my mistakes. Luna studied the woman who had tormented her for 23 years, and she found to her surprise that the anger had burned away, leaving only pity. It's not too late, Luna said quietly. My father is being exiled, but I'm not part of his conspiracy. Chancellor Morrison confirmed it. I was a pawn, not a player. I'll have to live with what I've done, but I'll have the chance to choose differently going forward. She held out a folded piece of paper. These are the names and locations of Omegas my father trafficked. Help them. Make amends. Maybe then you'll find the redemption you're looking for. Victoria took the paper with shaking hands. Thank you. I don't deserve your mercy. None of us deserve mercy, Luna replied. We just hope for it, and sometimes if we're lucky we get the chance to earn it. As Victoria walked away, Kieran's hand found Luna's. You could have destroyed her, he said. You had every right. Revenge doesn't heal wounds, Luna replied. It just creates new ones. If we're going to build something better, we have to be better. Kieran smiled a genuine smile that transformed his usually stern face. The Northern Territories are going to be very different with you at my side. Is that an official offer? Luna asked, her heart racing. It's a proposal, Kieran said. He turned to face her fully, storm rising to stand beside them. Luna Ashwood Beast, speaker, heir to Arya the Wise, will you accept the mate bond? Will you come with me to the Northern Territories not as my subject, but as my equal partner, my queen? The entire council chamber had gone silent, every wolf watching this moment. Luna looked at the man who had protected her, believed her, fought beside her. She looked at Storm, the wolf who had chosen her when no one else would. She looked at Rowan, her sister restored. At Elder Margaret, smiling with approval. At the future spreading before her like an open road. Yes, Luna said. To all of it. Yes. Kieran pulled her close, his lips finding hers in a kiss that sealed the bond between them. Power flared his alpha dominance, her beast speaker gift. Storm's wild nature all intertwining into something new and stronger than any of them alone. When they finally pulled apart, Storm howled, the sound echoing through the chamber and out across the mountains. And every wolf present joined in acknowledging the new queen, celebrating the bond, marking this moment as the beginning of a new era. Spring sunlight streamed through the windows of the Northern Territories Council chamber, warming the polished oak table where Luna Ashwood Nightshade sat reviewing reports. 6 months since the trial. 6 months since the corrupt council fell. 6 months since everything changed. The Beast Speaker Academy occupied the old Silver Ridge territory, now Marcus's land, seized and repurposed for something worthy. 12 students ages ranging from 7 to 43, learning to embrace gifts they'd spent lifetimes hiding. Luna taught 3 days a week, Kieran at her side when duties allowed. The Omega Protection Act had passed unanimously through the Alliance. 200 rescued Omegas now held positions of leadership across the Northern Territories. Teachers, healers, council members, warriors. Rowan led the Omega Advocacy Council from Silver Ridge's rebuilt packhouse, her voice fierce and unwavering in demanding justice for those who'd been silenced too long. Victoria ran the rehabilitation program for former council loyalists, her penance and her purpose intertwined. She'd located and freed 47 trafficked Omegas in 6 months, working tirelessly to undo her father's damage. It would take a lifetime, but she'd finally found her path. Elder Margaret had lived to see the prophecy fulfilled, passing peacefully in her sleep 2 months after the trial, a smile on her weathered face. Her last words to Luna had been simple. You've made an old woman very proud, child. The wingless speaker rose and darkness fell. Now light can grow. Luna's hand moved to her swollen belly. 5 months along, the healer said. A girl. Storm hadn't left her side since the pregnancy was confirmed, the wolf's protective instincts even stronger than Kieran's. Ready. Kieran's voice pulled her from reflection. She looked up at her mate, her king, her equal partner in ruling territories that sprawled from the Rockies to the northern coast. He wore the same black, carried the same quiet power, but his eyes held warmth reserved only for her. Ready? Luna confirmed. They walked together to the balcony overlooking the central courtyard where wolves gathered, hundreds of them, free and thriving, under a new order built on justice rather than corruption. Storm padded between them, tail high with contentment. Kieran addressed the crowd, his voice carrying across the assembled packs. He spoke of the reforms, of the changes that had transformed their world in 6 short months. He spoke of accountability, of transparency, of building a future where no child would suffer as Luna had suffered. But when he gestured for Luna to speak, the courtyard fell into expectant silence. Luna stepped forward, one hand on the stone railing, the other resting on her belly. Storm sat beside her, and she could feel the connection not just to the wolf, but to every creature in the territory. Birds in the trees, foxes in the forest, even the insects in the grass. All of them aware of her, all of them part of the vast web of life she'd learned to navigate. 6 months ago, I was invisible, Luna said, her voice clear and strong. I was told I was broken, worthless, less than nothing, because I couldn't transform, couldn't access the wolf that should have been my birthright. She paused, meeting the eyes of wolves in the crowd, some who had known her at Silver Ridge, others who had only heard her story. But I wasn't broken. I was different. And difference is not weakness, it's evolution. It's adaptation. It's nature saying, here's another way to survive, another way to thrive. Luna's hand moved from her belly to rest on Storm's head. The greatest lie we've ever been told is that power must roar, that strength must dominate, that worth must be proven through force and transformation. She looked at Kieran, and he nodded encouragement. But real power, Luna continued, real power whispers. It heals. It connects. It understands that we are all part of something larger than ourselves, a web of life that includes not just wolves, but every creature, every living thing. She gestured to the crowd, to the territory beyond. In 6 months, we've proven that another way is possible, that alphas can lead through wisdom rather than brutality, that omegas deserve protection and respect, not exploitation, that gifts come in many forms and all of them have value. Luna's voice softened but lost none of its strength. My daughter will be born into a world where she can be exactly who she is, whether that's a warrior or a healer, a transformer or a speaker, a queen or a teacher. She'll never be told she's broken. She'll never have to hide her gifts. She'll know from her first breath that she belongs. She looked out across the assembled wolves, across the territory that was now her home, and felt peace settle into her bones. That's the world we're building, not through revolution or violence, but through steady work, through choosing compassion over cruelty, through believing that every voice deserves to be heard, even the quiet ones, even the ones that speak without words. Luna's hand found Kieran's, their fingers intertwining. Power doesn't always roar, she said, her voice carrying to every corner of the courtyard. Sometimes it whispers, sometimes it heals. Sometimes it simply exists quiet and certain in those who were told they had none. The courtyard erupted in cheers and howls, wolves celebrating not just Luna, but the future she represented. As the crowd dispersed, Kieran pulled Luna close, his hand joining hers on her belly. Our daughter is going to be extraordinary, he murmured against her hair. She already is, Luna replied, just like her father. Storm pressed against both of them, completing their circle, and Luna felt the rightness of it all. The invisible Omega had become a queen. The broken girl had become a bridge between species. The survivor had become a builder of new worlds. That night, as Luna stood at the window of their chambers watching the moon rise over the mountains, she thought about the sparrow she'd saved on the morning the gathering began. It had healed just as she'd promised, had returned to its nest, to its family, to its life. She'd been that sparrow once, broken-winged and desperate, waiting for someone to see her, to help her to believe she was worth saving. Now she was the one who helped heal broken wings, who saw the invisible, who believed in the worth of every living thing. A raven landed on the windowsill, its obsidian eyes bright with intelligence. The forest creatures wanted me to tell you, it said in her mind, that they are proud to call you Pack. The speaker has risen, and the world is better for it. Luna smiled, running her fingers through Storm's fur as the wolf pressed against her legs. Tell them thank you, she replied, and tell them the real work is just beginning. But we'll do it together, always together. The raven nodded and took flight, disappearing into the night sky with a call that sounded like celebration. Luna closed the window and turned back to where Kieran waited, his arms open, his eyes full of love and pride and partnership. The invisible Omega had found her voice. The broken girl had discovered her strength. The survivor had become a queen, and her reign had only just begun.